Can we talk about music? Or can music talk for itself? Let's find out. My name is Olga Jegunova, and this is Talking Music. Today my guest is conductor Vladimir Jurowski. Vladimir is amongst those people who seems to know pretty much everything, and talking to him is like referring to the encyclopedia. We touched upon many things, including corona crisis, orchestral work, and of course, the music. Vladimir Jurowski was born in Moscow, where he completed the first part of his musical studies at the Music College of the Moscow Conservatory. Later he relocated with his family to Germany, where he studied in Dresden and Berlin. Jurowski is about to take up the position of the General Music Director of the Bayerische Staatsoper in Munich. He is currently Chief Conductor and Artistic Director of the Rundfunk-Sinfonieorchester in Berlin, and has been for many years a principal conductor of the London Philharmonic. In addition, he holds the titles of Principal Artist of the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment, Artistic Director of the Russian State Academic Symphony Orchestra, and Artistic Director of the George Enescu International Festival in Bucharest. He has previously held the positions of the first Kapellmeister of the Komische Oper Berlin, Principal Guest Conductor of the Teatro Comunale di Bologna, Principal Guest Conductor of the Russian National Orchestra, and Music Director of the Glyndebourne Festival Opera. Vladimir Jurowski enjoys close relationships with the world's most distinguished artistic institutions, collaborating with many of the world's leading orchestras, including the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra, the Staatskapelle Dresden, the Gewandhausorchester in Leipzig, the Cleveland and Philadelphia orchestras, New York Philharmonic, Chicago and Boston symphonies, and has also conducted the Berlin and Vienna Philharmonic orchestras. He is a regular guest at the BBC Prom, Musikfest Berlin, and the Dresden, Lucerne, Schleswig-Holstein and Rostropovich festivals. I had to start our interview with corona crisis. I felt that Vladimir was really worried about the current situation. And this is why.
Today the weather was sunny and I went out into town just to breathe some fresh air. There were hundreds, thousands of people on the streets, just enjoying the sun or doing sports, playing with their dogs or children. And you can go to a drugstore which sells everything, including DVDs and CD players and what you will, and spend hours in the shop. This is allowed, but giving a theater performance is not allowed. There was a brief period after the summer when the concerts were permitted, and there were many rules to be followed about the duration of the concert, the amount of people on stage, etc., etc., etc. And we complied with all of them. We completely reinvented the programs. And it is proved, it has been proved, that not a single person got sick during such a concert, neither on stage nor in the audience. But it's the fear of closed spaces. But there are ways of presenting art to people outdoors. We all know that. I see that the art is becoming more and more dispensable in the society, and particularly the non-commercial art which I'm representing. Non-popular side of musical art, and without major support from the governments, I don't see how we can pull it off. And I don't need to tell you that in Britain, of all countries, the governmental support of the arts has been decreasing every year, and this current pandemic, crisis with pandemic and crisis with Brexit definitely didn't help. So it's like we entered a completely new state of war against an invisible enemy. And we know that the First World War lasted 4 long years, Second World War lasted 6 long years, or 5.5 long years. So God knows how long this one is going to last, especially since there is no visible enemy, and it's very difficult to consolidate against an enemy you can't see.
While in lockdown, Vladimir works on several online productions. Amongst them, there is a piece by Igor Stravinsky called Soldier's Tale, also known as L'Histoire du Soldat. It is a theatrical work to be read, played, and danced by 3 actors, 1 or several dancers, and accompanied by a septet of instruments, or 7 instruments.
Entre danger de Neuilly, et il s'en va droit devant lui. Où est-ce qu'il va comme ça? Marche depuis longtemps déjà. Le ruisseau, ensuite le pont. Où est-ce qu'il va? Le sait-on?
Tell me more about this online production versus a real live performance.
It is a very special piece, done in a very special way, as a kind of a marriage of arts, music, theatre, dance. It was not a poor ersatz, replacement of a live performance. It was a special new form which couldn't be better suited for this particular piece. But when it comes to a symphonic concert, that's something different. And that's where I need this live experience. I need to be feeling the emotion of the performers and sharing it with the people sitting next to me. I mean, it's like watching a very good film. You can watch it on your own, on your computer screen, or on a big flat screen at home, but it won't be the same as sharing the emotional experience from a film with some other people, even if it's only 10. I remember my youth, I used to, obviously there were no videos. In my youth in Soviet Union, we didn't have a video player at home, and so the only way to watch films, apart from television, which was very poor choice, was going into a movie theater, to film theater. And I remember sitting in performances of Tarkovsky or Bergman films, which just surfaced then during the Gorbachev era. And sometimes there were another 7 or 8 people next to me. That was all. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Even the few people create this feeling of a common experience. You're sharing something with others. It is not quite the same thing without the audience, both for acoustical and for emotional reasons. So the absence of bodies reflecting and absorbing the sound is one thing, but the absence of ears, eyes, minds and hearts absorbing the performance and reflecting it in the way they emote about it, which we can't see, especially the conductor can't see it because the conductor has the audience in his back. But we can feel it. And sometimes we can hear it. We can hear when people stop breathing. You know that feeling with the packed Albert Hall during a prom with 6,000 people there, and then suddenly they all stop breathing at one moment. This is quite heart-stopping.
I always wonder about the relationship between the manuscript, the musical text, and an interpreter. How much freedom do we actually have?
The text is but a sketch. It's nothing but an architectural plan according to which the building is being built. But when you're building it, you have to make adjustments. So music is perfect. Great music is perfect on page when you're reading it. But it is not by definition perfect when you're playing it off the page. You have to make the sounding image come as close as possible to the perfection of the sketch on paper. You all know this famous remark by Brahms that he said that my favorite Don Giovanni performance is the one which I'm hearing in my armchair when reading the score. But that is composer's talk. Of course, for the composer, the perfection, even if Don Giovanni is not his work, is always inside his or her mind, is what they have thought up, what they created with their inner ear. But for the rest of the humanity, these pieces only exist when they resound. And that's why you need a performer. You need someone, either a person or a group of people, to bring the image off the paper into the realm of an acoustical world and make it come to life. And every time it would come to life in a different shape, slightly different. It's never the same.
What is the main responsibility of the conductor while working with an orchestra?
Those people involved in the performance physically, producing the sound, cannot objectively tell how much or how little they're giving, and even less can they tell how much more or how much less they should be giving in order to give a near perfect rendition of the score. Only a person standing outside and ideally not being involved in sound production, him or herself, can give a more or less independent and thus objective account, and this is the conductor. It is better with works of a complex nature. Now you would ask, what is the works of complex nature? I think anything starting from Baroque operas or oratorios. So, for instance, Bach cantatas and particularly his passions, written, as you know, for double chorus, double orchestra. They need one person to coordinate the efforts. In a string quartet, you have all four persons involved in the music making, but there is always one who is the informal or sometimes formal leader of the group. Most of the time it's first violin, primarius, or primaria, in case it's a woman, but it can be a cello, can even be a viola. We know that Bach, for instance, when not playing organ or harpsichord, he sometimes sat inside the orchestra, and he always preferred to play, he played violin too, but he preferred to play viola when leading, because viola had least to do. So he had a free ear and sometimes a free hand to give cues and indicate. But you see, music got more and more complex over the years, and when it comes to such works as Mahler symphonies, I don't really want to hear a Mahler symphony performed without a conductor, Not because I don't believe that such thing isn't possible. Anything is possible these days. You can also find a fantastic group of musicians which would be able to, rehearse it for months and it will be perfectly together. But I think the whole nature of a Mahler symphony or of a symphony by Brahms is that it is not a collective, it is a personal statement. It is a personal statement of a composer who didn't think of those hundreds of personas performing his music. He thought of instruments, but the thought was as unified as it would be when he himself would play it with his 10 fingers.
How do conductors actually work? I've noticed that some have bare hands, but the others choose to have a magic wand or a stick. Tell me, what does a stick do and what is a stick technique?
Stick technique is very similar to the finger technique in the piano playing, or the art of articulation on any instrument or in singing. Stick technique is the articulation of the conductor. By stick technique is meant the ability to transmit very minor, fine-tuned deviations from the main tempo, from the main speed, indications of rubato, and very purposeful entries given to the players with minimal physical effort. It's a very purposeful technique which has been invented by clever men over the years of the conducting profession existed. The first person to use stick was German violinist Louis Spohr. He was a friend of Carl Maria von Weber and a very successful composer himself. So when conducting the orchestra, he first used the bow. He was playing, conducting. Then he stopped playing and decided to just conduct. He was a great violinist and founded one of the most important violin schools of the 19th century. But when conducting, he preferred to conducting with an object. And the first it was just the scrolled music. And then he came up with this stick, which was quite long with a pointed end. And that apparently made for some sensation in London when he came to London in 1822. And he was the first one to conduct an orchestra, not with a scroll of music or with a bow, but with this special stick. And of course then came conductors like Mendelssohn and Richard Wagner and Gustav Mahler, because we come in touch with the sound of the orchestra, and although each person is still continuing to play the way they play, a conductor is capable to influence not only the timing, but also the way an orchestra produces a sound. I would say the better the orchestra and the better the conductor, the more they can achieve together. Because a bad orchestra wouldn't know how to react. And a bad conductor wouldn't be able to win over a very good orchestra. So ideally you need a top-class orchestra and a good conductor who knows what valuable instrument he has or she has in front of them and knows how to use it. Because give a devil the violin, it would still not sound like music. I'm quoting the Soldier's Tale now. But if someone knows how to play a violin, a magical sound would come out. So with a good conductor and a good orchestra, it's like with a good violinist who's been given a Stradivari or Guarneri.
One of the most common questions after who's your favorite composer is how do you practice? And for musicians, instrumentalists, it's still a very annoying question, but a bit more obvious than for you, because your instrument is the whole orchestra. But still, I will dare you and I will ask you, Vladimir, how do you practice?
Well, to a certain extent, you can practice mentally. You can practice your inner hearing, because the way to influence the group is not just the personal charisma. Charisma is the vehicle which you use. But the actual command comes from inside, it comes from your inner ear. You need to hear the sound you want to get. When you hear the sound you want to get, you cannot always describe it with words, but you can always imagine it. If you can imagine it, if you can visualize this sound, then it will come to you when you conduct. It takes a certain amount of time to prepare a piece with yourself at home, just practicing with your eyes. Then it takes a long or shorter period of time to prepare the orchestra to be able to give your rendition of this sound image. But then comes the actual concert or series of concerts. So the final result, if it happens only in the concert. Because the actual trick is that everyone involved needs to be fully prepared and well trained, but in the moment of performance we all need to be slightly out of our minds. We need to go in a slightly altered state of mind. I mean, not quite comparable with the drugged state, but something similar, because obviously the adrenaline produced by our system is a drug, and the adrenaline, fueled by adrenaline, our mind works about 4 times faster, and our imagination works also very differently. So when I'm rehearsing the orchestra, I'm preparing them for the trip, for the journey, for the quick ride in a fast machine, to quote John Adams. Sometimes it's not such a quick ride, sometimes it's a Wagner, it's a 5-hour ride. But the actual thing, for me at least, is the concert or performance.
To conclude, tell me, how do you manage to exist in three-dimensional state of mind during live performance? While reacting to the sound produced and while anticipating or imagining the future sound, you still have to be in control of now and here.
I think it's about compartmentalizing your mind, about being able to divide your mind in these three compartments, of which the here and now, the present compartment, is the largest. The best comparison would be with, and it's not my comparison, I'm not pretending that I'm the one who invented it. Sergei Rachmaninoff was the first one to apply this comparison. Conducting is like driving motor vehicle, he said, a car. Because it's exactly the same. When you're driving a car, you have to constantly analyze the situation on the road, and what has just happened might influence your future decision. But the main focus should be on the road, on the here and now, and on your goal, so you don't lose the address to which you were going. But of course, accidents on the road should ideally be prevented rather than reacted to.
And what is your seatbelt? What keeps you safe?
The score is my seatbelt, because the score is a constant source of grounded inspiration. It's not coming from some cloudy realms of the mind. It's there. It's pre-existent, and if something goes wrong, stick to the score.
Stick to the score if you want to drive safely through the horizons of music. And please stick to listening our podcast. Thank you so much, and see you next time.